Good morning, everybody. So since last week, we've gone over a couple of key concepts for the class. Annotating was last week. So how to effectively annotate a text is more than just highlighting, which is what a lot of beginning college readers and writers do, is they just highlight, and then later on they look back at the text and they kind of think, why did I highlight that? Right? And you never want to be stuck in that type of situation. So you want to make sure that in addition to highlighting main ideas, that you are annotating as well, adding information into the margins, making personal connections, larger connections from the text to world, text to self. And another useful tool for annotating is whenever you find a term or a word that is unfamiliar to you, you want to either circle that word, underline that word, and then in the margin, write out the definition. And I would encourage you, when you find these words while reading, to take a moment in the middle of reading and go and find that definition and define it right then and there, so you aren't missing any key ideas or concepts. Now, the other thing that we talked about is summary writing. And obviously, with this first paper being a summary and analysis paper, summary is going to be really, really important. And so there's a difference between paraphrasing, summary, and retelling. Now, in this class, we're not going to do a lot of retelling. Retelling is trying to recreate some sort of a document or text word for word exactly as it was. That's honestly not that useful of a skill in college composition. Summary and paraphrase is where we are going to want to put our focus. So think of paraphrasing as if you were taking what you read and paring it down into one sentence. All right? And summary writing is more of paring down what you read into a paragraph. So that's the difference between paraphrasing and summary. Now, paraphrasing is going to be really useful when you're reading an article. For every paragraph that you read, I would encourage you, as part of your annotations, to go ahead and bracket off to the side, and in the margin, write a paraphrase for that paragraph. Pare it down to one sentence. Then, at the end, you can look back at all of your paraphrases, and you're going to be able to get a good feel for a summary, all right, and how you can create a paragraph out of those paraphrases. Now, what a lot of beginning writers tend to do with summary writing, which is kind of a pitfall, is they add too much what's called fluff, or they get very wordy. You want to be very economical with your words, all right, in your summary. You want to pare it down to as few words as you can in your summary, and have as little fluff as possible. A lot of beginning college writers look at summary and kind of internally they kind of say, yes, I can do a summary, and this is an area where I can fill lots of space and meet that page count. And that's a big pitfall that you want to try to avoid, is the idea of fluffing. Now, one of the other ideas that we talked about was an abstract. Now, an abstract is essentially a summary of your own paper. And you'll find a lot of abstracts in the front of academic articles that you can find online. And abstract is something we're going to be practicing with both this first paper and then paper 4 in the class. And then, of course, in 122, you'll be practicing as well. So essentially, for your abstract, you want to write a summary of your paper, and that it takes its own page. Right after your title page, you'll have your abstract page. Then your paper will begin. Now, another idea that we looked at was attributive tags. And an attributive tag is a method of citation where you're going to state the author before your citation. So, for instance, according to Jane Doe, who works for the University of Awesomeness, That is an attributive tag. It shows the author, it gives her a credential, and then you can cite the source. So that can be really, really effective for multiple reasons. But one of the reasons, the big reasons why attributive tags can be really important is that you can build your own subtle bias, or you can recognize subtle bias in other people's writing if you understand how to manipulate attributive tags. For instance, if you say Jane Doe states, right, that's very neutral, as opposed to Jane Doe condemns, right? That's going to give the reader, it's just a slight change in words, but it gives the reader an entirely different feel about Jane Doe and her point of view, which builds your bias as a writer. That is something to also be aware of when you're breaking down any kind of article. Look at the way that they're using their verbs in their attributive tags. That'll give you a real big hint into their own audience and their own purpose, that author, audience, and purpose, which is what it always goes back to. Well, until next week,